Hello, this is Brooke Kidd, and you're listening to Artistry.
Welcome to another episode of Artistry, where art meets industry. We are your hosts, Rachelle Etienne-Robinson and Stan Substantial Robinson. All right, and welcome to another episode of Artistry. Today's guest is our founder and executive director of World Arts Focus at Joe's Movement Emporium, the largest independent performing arts center in Prince George's County, incorporating dance, movement, and performing arts. Please welcome Brooke Kidd. Brooke, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here with you both.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
We are so happy to have you here. I know it's been an interesting several months for all of us in the PG area, as well as the nation and the world with the pandemic. So we thank you so much for being here. Let's get started with, what is your earliest experience with art?
I used to choreograph to any song I would hear. And when I was very little, a toddler, my family used to create floats for our small town's annual Labor Day parade. And my grandfather created a ship of Peter Pan and pulled it along behind a small lawnmower. And I was Tinkerbell, and my cousins and uncles were different characters. And so we had a couple years of doing these large scale performing arts floats, and it was very magical. And I just didn't, it was my performing arts bug that was caught. And so soon after that, probably 5 or 6, I just started choreographing things, and then continuing on with the family production, I had my cousins in it. And then by the time I was like 7 or 8, I was making paper tickets. We were doing dress ups, and I made everybody in the family buy a ticket and watch our show.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Even then, you were business minded.
Right.
Love it.
Wow.
Love it. And so, and you, just to clarify, where did you grow up?
A small town in northern Indiana called Ligonier.
Awesome. Awesome. And so even through high school, we're still very much into performing arts and dance?
It was a hybrid of things. I really explored everything. I didn't have a lot of formal dance training until I was in high school. I kind of was self-taught, and there wasn't a lot of good access, and I rejected ballet early on. I just didn't like it. I grew to appreciate it much later just for its technical training, but style-wise, I just didn't like it, especially as it was taught in northern Indiana.
Right.
So, I wanted to be a solid gold dancer or like Soul Train. I wanted to be on Soul Train.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, my
God. I didn't want to do dippy stuff that I was seeing there. And I did, actually in high school, I did a lot of performing arts.
Wow. That's
one transformative thing in my exposure was going to France as an exchange student, my junior year of high school. And I got out of this small town and saw the world.
Right.
wow.
And I saw so much art and performing arts during that time. And I was exposed to a level of critical thinking and problem solving that the arts could provide. And it just stimulated everything in me.
What part of France were you in?
I was in Lyon.
Lyon. Oh, I love Lyon. Lyon is beautiful. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how does one from northern Indiana, the small town, end up in the Washington, D.C. area or Prince George's County, to be more specific?
Well, you can imagine I got the travel bug, and after, being in Lyon and kind of going to a lot of different European cities and areas, And so I wanted to pursue international relations. And I thought, well, that's my way to travel the world. And I was thinking, I might go into foreign service or do anthropology. I really wasn't thinking of a career in the arts, though that's so much what I was kind of hoping. And, I actually was applying to art schools. So I applied to Pratt and Art Institute of Chicago. And I was, vacillating between, am I going to do arts? Am I going to do international relations? And I just had this sense of wanting to come to Washington, D.C. And I chose American University, and I fell in love with the campus and the programs there. And I loved DC. It just felt like a calling to be here.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Let me ask you this. Had you had gone to art school, what would you have majored in and why?
At the time they didn't, 30 years ago, they didn't have the type of collaborative performance, art installation type thing. But I was envisioning that there would be something multimedia, multidisciplinary that would fuse design on a couple levels.
Wow. That's awesome.
So you create your own, your own path, which is good.
Yeah.
In addition to being the founder and executive director for Joe's Movement Emporium, you're very much an advocate for the arts. You have received several awards, actually, from, you were named Business Leader of the Year by Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, received the Sue Hess Maryland Arts Advocate of the Year Award by Maryland Citizens for the Arts, and was also a winner of the Maryland State Arts Council Individual Arts Award for Choreography. What would you say is the ultimate goal for you personally and the future of Joe's?
Well, I think we have a very interesting business model that has incorporated community need with supporting artists and how space is critical to facilitate that. And using space in unique ways, from empty commercial buildings, which we're going to have a lot of coming up.
Yeah.
And, neglected public spaces, those patches of land that no one claims. Space interests me. And there's such an exchange of need and opportunity. And artists can address the needs. And I hope so much with where our future goes, that artists will be at the table to solve the most critical and pressing issues facing us right now in 2020.
Yes.
Whether it's bringing forth unique and effective mental health services to being part of reimagining where the resources go in the continuum of policing to prison.
It's interesting where you went with the question, because one of the questions I was planning to ask you, and I feel like you went in that direction already, what role can the arts play? And we've seen how the arts has contributed throughout history, and how, like, for every major movement, it's played a pivotal role. And so I was just interested to know your take. So, feel free to elaborate more, but I definitely feel like you were already headed in that direction.
Yeah. My gosh, look at what murals have done for the current state of our protests.
Yeah.
We've never seen murals on streets before, right?
Right.
Wow. That's so exciting.
Yeah, and other cities are following suit as well,
Believe I am ready to do the parking lot at Creative Susan Arts Center.
Right there with you.
I mean, the revolution is going to be expressed by the artists, and going to engage people. It's the message for the change. It's the choreography for the cultural shift.
Right.
The artists have such importance right now to tell the story, past and future.
Right.
And so that we understand what we've gone through and why we need a change, and then to articulate and describe the change and create the comfort zone. And to go back to space is, I think artists create a space for the dialogue and the problem solving and the healing.
Absolutely.
So that we can go forward.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you were just talking about with as far as space, even Joe's current location, it grew out of a empty warehouse, 20,000 square feet. You all have been there since 2007. How did that all come about? Talk to us about that process.
We were first in a single storefront on 34th Street that opened up in 1995. And from there, we grew to occupy two more adjacent storefronts. So by 1998, we had half this little part of the block. And we really had an exciting array of programs. And that's when we started our artist partner model, where artists come in and have the same schedule every week, all year, and they're supported to rehearse and present and teach. And our big arts education programs started to grow as well. We were renting the space, and along the way, I was with a core group of people that started our Gateway Arts District. And it was the first arts district in Prince George's County and one of the first in the state. And I started to notice that people were spinning that for potential real estate benefits. And they were looking at the impact of the value of space in our arts district, not the value of the artists.
Right.
And there wasn't enough infrastructure to make sure that the artists would actually be able to stay once they did it. So there was a discussion that all of the current artists needed to find a way to buy their own space.
Wow.
Right.
So different people started to kind of a number of artists were actively looking to create a permanent home. So we wouldn't be priced out of the community. We branded arts.
Right.
Right around the corner was this empty warehouse, and it had been vacant for a number of years. And just through the grace of a higher spirit, we had the right connection that talked to the owner, and the owner was ready to sell. And we were able to piece together all the financing to make it happen. Then we launched a capital campaign and had to raise $3.2 million and it took years to do. 5 years of fundraising.
Wow. That's amazing though. I mean, look at it now, you know. It's just amazing to hear that story. Wow.
I wanted to ask, as being a woman-owned organization or woman-led organization, what have been some of your challenges being in some of these spaces where, especially I'm assuming from when you first started, where it was very male-dominated and being possibly maybe even the only woman in the room? Was that your experience, and how did you combat that?
Oh, yeah. The number one area where I still have to show some balls is around my insights on economic development. And people completely blow you off when you say that arts-based economic development is extremely powerful and it will transform a decrepit commercial area.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a perspective of it because they don't look at it that way. They look at commercial development success from different indicators. And they're not looking at do we have mom and pop businesses that were sustained through new infill? Have we assured that local businesses and entrepreneurs have come to the table and had the same opportunity? So that's one area where I feel, being a female and being an artist, I have been just not heard.
Right.
And then being a female in a nonprofit arts organization, my salary is still extremely low compared to peers that are male of a similar size organization. And, I could set my salary, but, it's a balance of resources.
Right.
For me, it's more important to make sure everybody is our salaries are all going up at the same rate, not just mine because of some comparison.
Right.
But I must say that within our own arts sector, it doesn't play a role hardly ever. But I think it's when we're kind of out in the general population, some of that is different. Other than the salary, other than the gender inequity of leadership positions, even in arts organizations.
Yeah. I want to go back to even the very, very beginnings. You, upon graduating from American University with an MA in dance, shortly thereafter, you were, leading classes. How did that come about, being fresh out of school to now running your own organization? Like, talk to us about that process. Did you feel that school prepared you to do all that, or was it learning on the job? What inspired it?
There's a couple things that were big influences to get to opening the space. One is knowing about, having been an exchange student, I had planned to do some sort of study abroad in college. And so I chose a program that took me to Cameroon. And it was such a great program because it was really new. And there were only 10 students.
Oh, wow.
And so we had such a phenomenal experience traveling all over Cameroon. And I got to see and participate in so much dance and music.
Oh, great.
And I hung out at the National Center for the Performing Arts in Yaoundé, where dance, music, and theater were all together, and the artists mixed together. And I realized, a multidisciplinary venue, that is so much more exciting than trying to build a dance-only organization.
Yeah.
And so that gave me this idea that we need to stop isolating dance from the other performing arts. And dancers need to be more well-rounded in all of their performing arts, because African performing arts professionals do it all.
Right.
They're so phenomenally skilled. And I'd never been around so many artists that had this level of skill in all mediums. It didn't say, I'm just a dancer. And they were not that much older than me. It was a different perspective of how they viewed artists. It wasn't so segregated amongst the mediums. So that was important. Plus the incredible education I received about the importance of African culture and how it influenced the rest of my studies in my undergraduate career. So when I got back from Cameroon, the first couple years, I had major opportunities through the city paper want ads. So the first one was seeing an administrative assistant job for the Center for Cross-Cultural Communications, which was the nonprofit for Warren Robbins, who's the founder of the Museum of African Art.
Wow, okay.
And he was such a character. This tenacious little Jewish guy who was in the Foreign Service in the 40s and 50s and bought a Don mask in an antique store. And it started this journey of collecting African art that became the Museum of African Art.
Wow.
But at the same time, he was hanging out with European intellectuals and artists. He saw the same Don mask represented in a Paul Klee painting. And so he started to realize that all these modern artists had appropriated or been inspired by African art.
Right.
And he dedicated his life to showing the influence of African art in modern art. And so I went to work for this guy as his personal administrative assistant for 2 years. And he encouraged me, like, you've got ideas. You've got this vision. Just start a nonprofit.
Right.
Because he had done it. And so he gave me some guidance. He even came to one of my dance shows, because at that time I was dancing with a lot of different groups. And there was just a mentorship and support for the vision. And ultimately, he was a little salty that I left him as his administrative assistant, because I was a good one. But the exposure that I got, I mean, he had personal correspondence with Joseph Campbell.
Wow.
And Picasso.
Wow.
And he constantly hosted African artists or embassy personnel or just different people coming through. And it was just really an incredible education.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Wow. So this year marks Joe's 25th anniversary. What are your most memorable moments?
Oh, Lordy. I don't know. Okay, I was just going to go with the first one that came up in mind. So the community really helps us all the time. For a couple years, we had a chronic stormwater issue in the lower level at Joe's. And there was like 3 days of rain, and the electricity went out too. And so the main sump pump wasn't running, and it's a huge pit. So we literally, to prevent more flooding that was going on, we had to carry buckets of water from the pump all the way up and dumping them in the streets.
Wow.
Well, people found out we were doing that, and like 10 people showed up to just help from the community.
Wow.
And that's always been the case here, is the community shows up, pitches in, has been part of how we operate.
Wow. Are there any others that you think of?
Oh gosh, lots. So Joe's was co-founded with Ajax Joe Drayton, a fellow dancer and choreographer. And we were performing together, and we were part of there was 5 choreographers. We all needed rehearsal space. And so we decided to create the lease for Joe's, because there just wasn't any affordable space in the mid-90s for independent artists.
Right.
And especially if you weren't in ballet or a certain type of modern dance.
Right.
But even then, there still wasn't enough studios. So Ajax and I used to do a bunch of outdoor performances with whatever pickup artists we could do. We did an event called Sweeping the Avenue, which had an 11-year run, which was doing a community cleanup and creating a performing arts experience with it. And one year we had the most fabulous found art trash dragon. And we had a bunch of kids, and we ran this really eclectic Japanese visual artist that lived around the corner. And we just did this dragon around the streets, and it was really long. It had a rocking chair for the head and some trash can lids and these old sails and material for the tail. I mean, there are like 15 people underneath it. And we're going around, and Santana, this Japanese artist, is playing percussion behind us, and it was just crazy and fun.
This year, Substantial Art and Music with Creative Suitland Arts Center will host its second annual It's a Kwanzaa celebration. It will be a virtual holiday program featuring performing artists and educators from the DMV area. This year, due to COVID, to ensure the safety of our audience, talent, vendors, and crew, we've decided to hold the celebration virtually on the first day of Kwanzaa, Umoja, Saturday, December 26th, and streamed via YouTube. Returning will be our host, Stan Substantial Robinson and Brother Victorious, followed by a restorative justice presentation provided by Randy Green of Circle of Impact Restorative, storytelling from Gigi Gumspoon and Mama Sirwan, seated yoga with Lisa Renee, music provided by Tamara Mullins, and a dance performance by Ni Dembaya African Drum and Dance Ensemble. The program will also include a virtual marketplace of Black-owned businesses for your viewing pleasure, all from the comfort of your own home. This is our way of bringing the community together, even though we're apart. So, continuing to expand both the presence in the community, recently, I won't say recently. So in the past several years, you all have been working towards opening an alternate location in Suitland called Creative Suitland Arts Center. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because that's where I got to meet you guys. So one of the county leaders that was part of the creation of our Gateway Arts District, Peter Shapiro, reached out to talk about the needs for a community development strategy in the Suitland area to accompany some development that is happening and is more that's planned. And they were entertaining proposals from different businesses on community engagement strategies. And so he asked if I thought there was an arts opportunity. And I was like, well, yeah, you've got the high school right down the street,
right.
Suitland High School. And so he said, well, send me a proposal. And that was I had been thinking about how do we take our model into another community.
Right.
So this was a wonderful opportunity for us to do that. And we submitted a proposal for assessing the cultural resources and asking community what they would like to see in the arts, and if there's any critical needs or issues they want to address. And so on about a 1.5-year process, we held meetings, did surveys, met amazing artists like you guys, just got to know the community, organized performances and activities in different parts of the greater Suitland area, from Iverson Mall to Windsor Crossing, and certainly connected to Suitland High School students. And then we prepared a report that verified that the community really wanted more arts assets, right. From all ages, right. from babies to elders and everything in between. And meanwhile, the Revenue Authority had purchased the property for future development, and we're either going to have it used for something or tear it down and wait for development. And there was just this idea of, well, maybe we could let these guys have an art center. Right. And so I pushed and pressed and said, yes, we can do this. And, had to back it up with, finding people who might want to be in it, and envisioning the programs. And it's been fairly easy to attract an incredible array of artists, new artists that weren't part of Joe's, that have roots in Suitland, as you do, and are ready to be there.
Yeah. You know, it was such a brilliant idea. When you consider how many artists that community has, created, whether they were people who were traveling from like various places around the county, coming to be educated in Suitland, or the very people that grew up in that community, like myself, and so many other people. And so, so the moment that we learned about what you all were doing, like, it was just super exciting, and it's just great to witness, because it just, it's one of those things. At the moment I heard it, I was like, that makes so much sense. And so I'm just excited to see where it goes, just because I feel like, I think I've said this to you before, but I just can't imagine how, like, maybe how further along I would have been, or how, I look at what I've done and then I think back like, man, imagine if I had this resource in this community on top of having this school. How much further along could I have been? How many other people who kind of gave up on their dreams along the way because they didn't have a resource like that? Like, what type of difference could it make? And so I'm excited to see what it does for the community in the future, just going forward. It's just great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. It was kind of shocking that you have so much talent from Suitland High School and very little visibility in the greater county or the immediate neighborhood.
Right.
And that's one of the things that the residents regularly said is, we want to see those students.
Yeah.
We don't know when to see them. We don't know what they're doing. And so there has to be a intermediary for that to be shared.
Yeah.
Right now, the Suitland High School visual arts seniors have artwork up at the space. And one of the biggest regrets for this shutdown has been the plans that we had for the spring and summer with all of the students.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get back there.
Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt.
So speaking of that, besides the ultimate challenge of not being able to, to see and to participate in person physically, but the arts, always being inventive and creative, what do you see for the future post-COVID as far as for performing arts? A lot of folks are doing, for instance, Zoom performances or IG Live performances. Do you see that continuing?
Yeah, I think we have to continue to be part of a virtual performance format. I think by this fall, we'll be able to have very small audiences and with broadcast.
Right.
So we're ramping up the ability to film and broadcast anything that goes on here in studios or theaters at both venues. I'm hopeful that, so I think we're going to have more shows, smaller audiences, and that it could really benefit all of our performing artists.
Yeah.
Because they deserve to perform more than once or twice.
Yeah.
That has always disturbed me, especially how dance is presented, that you have like a 2-show run at best.
Right.
And maybe the model now will be people have a 5 or 10 show run, no matter what performing arts medium they have in these very small audiences. And we will treasure that audience and performer connection more.
Right.
Wouldn't it be amazing if our audiences showed so much more engagement and appreciation for what it took for that artist to get on stage and everyone else behind them to make it possible?
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that's That's a great, that's something I hadn't considered, but I think that's really great because, I mean, as a touring musician, that's definitely something you see where it's like, I oftentimes will visit a city to perform and, maybe in some cases the show goes really well. There's a great turnout. And then there are plenty of times where it doesn't, right? And very few people come out. And a lot of times what will happen is immediately when I return home or get to a computer or get to my phone, I have messages from people saying, hey, when are you going to come to this city? I would love to see you perform. And you literally just left that place, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but I think now, because this has been something that, like, I mean, it feels like it's been ripped away from people, right? I was literally on tour when all of this started happening, and several of the venues I performed at, we were the last show before they canceled all of their shows. And so, and when I did a virtual performance, the first one I did, one of the best parts has been that people who live in cities that I don't get to venture to got to see it, along with people who had been to these live events. But just the appreciation level in that moment just seemed so high. Like it felt almost as good as like performing at a sold out event, right? So like now I'm just interested to see how that energy carries over. Like maybe now people realizing that, hey, like anything can happen. I love this person's art. I love this person's music. I love their dance, whatever. I don't know when I'm gonna get this chance again to witness it live, to be in the same space with them. Because I've seen what the world looks like when I can't do that. So like, it's just going to be really, really interesting, No,
I was just going to say, as an administrator, as an arts administrator, are there any talks that you've been a part of, that you've been privy to, as far as grantors and what that's going to look like for those that are applying now for operating support, project support? Because a lot now this affects, when we talk about performance, when you talk about, operating expenses, a lot has shifted, a lot has changed. How has that affected you, and what conversations have you been involved in regarding that?
Not a whole lot of conversations with funding. I think everybody is still in an emergency space of, what do you need to stay afloat?
Right.
We had to furlough quite a number of program staff, though I have been able to maintain 18 of our staff during this time, from a mix of, the PPP loan and some of the grants and individuals funding us.
Yeah.
Just really from, people just sending us a small gift.
Yeah.
It's been so supportive.
Wow.
And those who've made commitments for funding that was linked to programs that can't operate right now, they have, almost all of them have said, please use it as you need. So they've removed the restriction or opened up the intention of the funding.
Gotcha.
Afterwards, I'm not sure. I mean, we're starting to apply for a lot of our fiscal year 21 funds. Right. And just kind of rolling with it.
Right.
I mean, it is mid-June, and I have not even prepared my FY21 budget.
Right.
And I had a conversation with my treasurer last week, and people are, there's no huge pressure, but it is amazing what has had to pause in a 3-month period. I mean, I just now feel I can start to sketch out what a little bit of our programs will be from July to June of next fiscal year. But I know we're going to have to look very closely at our budget, especially quarterly, and we usually don't make budget amendments, but I assume we will.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's great is we have received a couple grants for the creative placemaking work at Creative Suitland.
Yeah.
Great, which is great.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. What would you say, again, with in celebrating your 25th year and being able to reflect back on all of your accomplishments? You guys started in the mid to early 90s. This is before, social media. As we know it today, this is before a lot of things. And so you've seen a lot of transitions. You've seen a lot of change, a lot of pros and cons. What would you say has been your staying power?
That our in terms of space, it's a place where people go to create and experience the arts. And by focusing on rehearsals and studio work, that's been timeless.
Right.
And I've also been, the organization is not built around any one production company or any one artist. And I think that has staying power. It's a collective of artists.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's not necessarily part of our brand, like who all those artists are. And, that's good or bad. But I also think our ability to generate work for artists is part of our staying power, because we will contract those artist partners out for different things. So I think it becomes a sustainable business model that if you're paying for rehearsal space at Joe's, then when we have gigs that come up, we give them to you, and then there's enough money moving around for both, and everybody benefits.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. I would say definitely your keen attention to community and your community's needs. At Joe's, for instance, you provide after-school programming for students. So you're providing childcare in a form of Club Joe's. You provide for your young people, for your young adults, workforce development program. How important would you say is community involvement? And I know you've mentioned several examples, but how important is community to your organization?
Oh, it's absolutely critical, because you can't make art just to make art. You have to make art with community. And I love you're never too old to become an artist. And most people would like to be an artist. So open the doors. Let everybody in to be an artist. Give them the skills to express and tell their story and affirm who they are.
Before we close out, I wanted to ask you, what would you like your legacy to be?
I'd like artists in arts education to be seen as a critical business in communities, and that Joe's played a role in that. I've seen the impact of Joe's transform the foot traffic in my part of Mount Rainier. And, it's to be seen if that'll happen in Suitland. We're starting to change the vibe of that corner of a lot. Will it spill out? Right. So I would love to be seen as how this work is a catalyst for equitable and authentic economic resources.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brooke.
Oh my God, Brooke, this is great.
Absolute
this
pleasure.
Is really good. Really, really good.
Thank you so much. It's good to reflect today, and thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Thanks for listening to Artistry, where art meets industry. This podcast has been brought to you by Substantial Art and Music. For more information, please visit www.subartmusic.com. You can also follow us on social media at subartmusic. We'll see you soon, but talk to you sooner. Peace.